Boston Celtics lose, but they might end up winning anyway. Jaylen Brown drops a triple-double. Did we see someone on the bench leapfrog somebody else against the Milwaukee Bucks? And why this was all about the chemistry right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course, the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. Thank you for making this show part of your daily routine and your first listen every single day. It's free. It's available everywhere you get your podcast Monday through Friday. Though, remember, now that we're heading into the playoffs, podcasts after every single game. So if there's a Saturday game, podcasts come on the Saturdays. There will be bonus podcasts for the duration of the playoffs. So make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcast. Download the show, bring it with you to work. I know a lot of people are starting to commute again. You're going back into the office. Ditch sports talk radio. You don't even know if they're going to be talking about the Celtics when you're in your car. So why wait around and listen to stuff you don't want to listen to? Download a podcast, bring it with you in the car, listen to it on the way to work. You'll just be happier when you get to work. I'm John Karalis. I cover the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. I'm also an author. I've written a book called the Boston Celtics All-Time All-Stars. I was also one of the media voters for the Boston Celtics 75th anniversary team unveiled this season. Today, I'm talking about the Boston Celtics loss to the Milwaukee Bucks, 127-121, which not a big deal. Actually, I think most people came out of this feeling good. I'd say my guess is a majority of Celtics fans come out of this loss and say, you know what? Not bad. Good effort. Nearly stole this game. I'll talk about that in detail more in the second segment. In the third segment, the chemistry issue, which I shouldn't say chemistry issue, the chemistry of this Celtics team, and interesting comments from Marcus Smart and why that was all on display in this game, why that made this game what it was. But let's start here. I'll talk a little bit about the game here in the first segment and, of course, the standings situation. So the Celtics lose this one by 6. They led it 121, 119 or 118 in with about a couple minutes left to go, and then didn't score again over the last 227. So it was 121, 118. They gave up a 9-0 run over the last 2.5 minutes. Boston missed 5 shots. They had one bad turnover from Jaylen Brown, who dribbled it off of, I think, George Hill's foot. Not a kick because he didn't actually kick the ball. You can't just dribble it off somebody's foot and just say, oh, it's a kick ball and get the shot clock restarted, because when instead of jacking up a shot with 2 seconds left, everybody would just throw the ball off of somebody's foot and say, oh, it's a kick ball. Give me 14 more seconds to shoot. That was a good call. There was no kick ball there. But hey, you know what? The Celtics had a lead in the fourth quarter against the Milwaukee Bucks, full strength. I will not acknowledge Grayson Allen as any sort of difference maker in this game. Milwaukee was at full strength. Boston, obviously no Rob, no Al Horford resting his back, no Jayson Tatum resting his knee, basically resting. Shouldn't even add the what they were resting. No, so 3 starters out. And what happens? Jaylen Brown drops a triple-double with 22 points, 11 assists, 10 rebounds, a steal, a block. He did have 4 turnovers, including the one I told you about, and didn't shoot particularly great. But overall, I would say it's a good night for Jaylen. If he had shot what he normally shot, he would have had a 35-point triple-double. But Jaylen in a spot where he could show that, hey, if you need to rely on me, you can rely on me. I can do a lot of this other stuff too. Drawing the double teams, passing out of that, getting the assist. It helped that other guys were hot. It helped that Daniel Tice made all of his 3-pointers and Derek White made half of his 3-pointers, and Marcus Smart was 7 of 12 from 3. It did help that the Celtics shot 42% from three and about 49.5% overall. That's how you get a lot of assists when other guys make baskets, but you have to make that pass first, and Jaylen was passing well. So Jaylen had a good game. We saw these guys play hard. We saw good performances all around. Again, I'm going to talk about that all in the second segment, but I come out of this game feeling good. I come out of this game thinking like, yeah, you know what? This is almost like the Toronto game. And Ime Udoka after the game said as much. This is just, hey, you come in there without three starters, you leave. Okay, it's a loss. Not a big deal. You had an opportunity to win the game. That's all you can do. Milwaukee is clearly trying to win that game, clearly trying to go for that second seed. So great. You can have it. Go for it. Take it. That's fine. The Celtics, I saw a lot of things that make me feel pretty good about this team still. Like how you feel about this team shouldn't be dependent on one win or one loss anymore. But when you see other guys stepping up, Sam Hausers of the world and Derek White hitting a lot of shots and Tice playing really well, generally speaking, that is like encouraging considering the potential for injuries. And, playoffs are weird. Playoffs are always weird. Something crazy always happens, right? There's always a matchup that's bad or a coaching move that's surprising. And you say, yeah, every once in a while, you're going to rely on one of these guys out of nowhere and it's going to end up paying off. So the Celtics end up losing and there's a little bit, just a tiny bit more clarity here because we're starting to hone in on the possibilities, that the more likelihoods. It's nothing is set other than the Miami Heat are now officially the top seed. So Miami is the number one seed. That's just done. The Milwaukee Bucks were probably the 2 seed. The Celtics are probably the 3rd seed. Philadelphia lost to the Toronto Raptors. They blew it in the second half. They are probably the 4th seed. Although there are still a lot of scenarios out there. I cannot sit here and say one thing is definitely going to happen and another thing is not. You just don't know over these next 2 games. Here's what the Celtics need to do. You need to beat the Grizzlies on Sunday. That's actually a serious game. The Celtics and Ime Udoka said after the game, he doesn't want his team to have all that time off. They don't want to have 2 full weeks off. So you can expect everybody to play in that game. Do they play the entire game? Do they play the first 3 quarters? Do they do something different? I don't know. But the Celtics seem to be, unless something changes between now and Sunday, seem to be set on, we're playing our guys that game to give them one good run before they take a week off while the play-in tournament hashes itself out and they have to prepare for whomever their first round opponent is. Now, if they fall to the 3 seed, it's probably going to be Chicago. It's not definitely yet because Chicago can still win a couple more games and Toronto could lose their 2 games and Chicago holds the tiebreaker over Toronto. So it's not officially official, but Toronto needs to go 0-2. Chicago needs to go 2-0. And that's just not likely to happen, but it could. It's only 2 games. So the Celtics are still probably in that 3 seed, and it's probably a 3-6 matchup with the Chicago Bulls. If they beat the Memphis Grizzlies, because if they beat the Memphis Grizzlies, they finish the season at 51-31, and Philadelphia can do nothing but tie the Celtics, and that will automatically drop them. But wherever the Celtics are, Philly will drop below because Boston has that tiebreaker. The real question is, do the Milwaukee Bucks finish 2-0? Do they go 1-1? However they finish the season after the Celtics win, because if Milwaukee and Boston end up tied, there's still a scenario there. The Celtics have the tiebreaker still, even with this loss to Milwaukee. If they tie with Milwaukee and they finish above Philadelphia because, and I'm not going to lay the whole thing out, but you start with in that scenario, in a 3-way tie or in a 2-way tie, it's head to head. Okay. The head to head is even. Then you go to division winner. Both teams would be division winner, conference record. The Celtics, if they end up tied, that will end up being, that could end up being tied if Milwaukee goes 1-1. So then you keep going down and down and down. And basically the Celtics have a better record against all playoff eligible teams. That's where the tiebreaker goes. It goes way, 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 way down. So the Celtics are still possibly a 2 seed. So don't go celebrating if you're like, oh, yay, 3. Like that's still not done. It's possible that the Celtics can get to 2. Is your mind like going numb? Are you having a headache yet? Because there's so many. I've never ever seen this before, and I've probably said this a million times on the podcast. But I'm shocked at just how close this is, and the fact is the Celtics have 1 game left, and we still don't even know where they're going to, what seed they're going to have. We don't know who their opponent's going to be. Nothing. 2 through 6 is completely up for grabs in some form or other. 2, 3, and 4 could finish. The Toronto Raptors have an opportunity to get up to the 4 seed still. That's wild. There's still a scenario where the Raptors become the 4 seed and the Raptors would have home court. Think about this, just as an aside. Think about being the Philadelphia 76ers. And this is a long shot, but all of a sudden, now you've got Tyrese Maxey, who is a key player on the team. He's not nobody, right? He's a potential all defensive team player and ineligible to play in Toronto. And you're like, well, that's okay. He'll just play the home games. And the Raptors get home court. That changes a lot. That changes something. That's a key player. It's obviously you have Embiid and you have James Harden, although it's not the same James Harden. I just don't fear James Harden like you used to fear James Harden. Philly's an interesting spot, man. They're in an interesting spot. They may not make it out of the second round again. So, but who knows? So much up for grabs. All right, we'll take a second here to come back. I'll talk a little bit more about the game, and then we can get into some of that other discussion about chemistry later on. First, I got to tell you about betonline.net, which is your number one source for all your betting needs, all your sports information. Head on over to BetOnline. You can bet on the, obviously you've got those NBA playoffs. You've got baseball. It has started up. I think the Red Sox are still waiting to play their first game, but baseball is back. They have your favorite Vegas casino games. They're on there as well. Find all the latest sports developments, including this week's Masters Championships, odds, podcasts, and reviews for all the different leagues this season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports. You can bet on esports now too. Scores. Head on over to the website today. You can use your mobile device if you'd like. Learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline is where the game starts. Please gamble responsibly. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Make one of the other Boston sports podcasts your second listen. Red Sox opening day postponed again, but they should be playing soon. So Locked On Red Sox, Locked On Patriots has you covered as the Patriots offseason continues. Locked On Bruins as the Bruins season wraps up. So check all those out. Or if you are not a fan of other Boston sports and you are a fan of another hockey, baseball, or football team, there's a Locked On podcast for you there as well. So check them all out and give them a subscription, subscribe there, find them on YouTube, all that stuff, wherever you find Locked On Celtics. It's very much worth. The network is spectacular. There's plenty of good stuff out there for you. The Celtics were spectacular in this game against the Milwaukee Bucks. They just couldn't pull it out. They almost did it, man. 127, 121 again. Told you about Jaylen Brown, but Marcus Smart was so good in this game. Marcus Smart, just let me keep taking these victory laps with Marcus Smart. Although this one was more about his shooting, super hot shooting, 7 of 12 from 3, 29 points, 7 assists, 2 steals. And he shot 62.5%, again, 58.3% from 3. So hot shooting night for Marcus Smart. That's great. But more so the passes, and his third quarter was just sublime. And again, he was hitting a ton of shots, but some of the passes he was making behind the back, between the legs, setting guys up. A great pass. It was a nice cut from Sam Hauser too. Like, you don't think of a 3-point shooter as a cutter, but Hauser's backdoor cut was just exactly the stuff I've been looking for. Remember earlier this season, if you're a regular listener, how much I was screaming about guys to cut. That was beautiful. And they've been doing it a lot more. And I've been very happy with how that's been going. But that backdoor cut was textbook stuff. Guy turns his head, you cut, and Smart just drops a perfect dime for him. It was beautiful stuff. Marcus Smart in this game, just awesome, especially in the third quarter where the Celtics, they were down 10. They cut 5 points off of that in the third quarter and took an early lead in the fourth quarter behind Peyton Pritchard, who was 5 of 10 from the field at 12 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, a block, which I love the idea of him having a blocked shot in the box score. But really it was just, I forget who was on, but it might've been Holiday, where he's just coming up with the ball. And once you're in your shooting motion, even if you slap down on it, like it's a steal, if it's determined that you're in your shooting motion, that's a blocked shot. So that's what the shot was. I want it to be what I picture it in my head as being is Peyton Pritchard rising up to meet somebody at the rim. And hey, Peyton Pritchard can dunk, so he can get up there. Peyton Pritchard rising up and doing the Kembe Mutombo, no, and just having like a big like trash talk moment. In my head, that's what a block shot in the Peyton Pritchard box score is. In reality, it was basically a steal, but we can all pretend. The beginning of the fourth quarter, a 7-0 run, the Celtics briefly took a lead, and they went back and forth. They did a pretty good job on Giannis. Now, I say that without having looked at his final box score: 29 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, a block. But still, I think that they did a pretty decent job on Giannis. He's Giannis. He's going to get what he gets. I thought the Celtics defensively overall, it was just not a great defensive game. When you're missing Horford and Rob and Jayson Tatum, your two best defenders in this double big configuration that basically anchors the Celtics elite defense. The entire reason why this defense is so good is because Horford and Robert Williams are back there and Marcus Smart's at the point of attack. But you take away that safety net, and this is what happens. You give up 127 points. But I thought they did a decent job. Also pretty good in this, Daniel Tice, 8 of 12. He had 15 points in the third quarter. It's a shame that Tice missed that bunny. They drew up a great play. Tice sprung free right underneath the basket, sideline out of bounds, which he just biffed it, man. Smoking bunnies. And he sat there at the end of the game and said, "Oh man." I felt bad for him because that was a potential win for the Celtics. And I know he just felt like absolute crap out of that. But I mentioned Sam Hauser, and when I said at the beginning of the podcast, did somebody leapfrog somebody else? Sam Hauser, 4 of 5, 3 of 4 from 3, 11 points, 4 rebounds, and assists. Compare that to Aaron Nesmith, who played 12 minutes to Hauser's 18, 0 of 3, zeros across the board. He did have a steal, but he had 2 turnovers, was a minus 13. He was in there for the worst of the worst, including just an egregious inbounding turnover early on where he just wasn't focused, wasn't paying attention, tried to do something too fast. And afterwards, Marcus Smart was like, "Hey, hold on now, calm down. Like that." Marcus is great at kind of organizing people like that, but that was egregiously bad. Hauser coming in now as the actual sniper, and Nesmith just not getting it. I thought maybe the garbage time last was it after the Wizards game where he hit a few in a row. Thought that might have spurred something on for Nesmith. He can do so many other things. He can drive and he can finish at the rim and he can defend, but it doesn't. It's erratic, and the mistakes that he makes are pretty bad, and he's just not hitting shots. The whole thing with Nesmith is after he was drafted, he said, "I'm an absolute sniper," and we just haven't seen it. There are circumstances that play into that, and I'm willing to be a little bit more patient with Nesmith, especially, more patient than a lot of other people are. But that patience is wearing a little thin, and this is going to be a big summer for him. In the meantime, Hauser just comes in and starts hitting shots and looks like the exact type of guy the Celtics could use in those tight spots. Those, hey, the offense is struggling. We need somebody to spot up, and Hauser's the guy. Right now, I trust Hauser to hit shots more than I trust Aaron Nesmith. Nesmith's the energy guy, but Hauser's the guy who's making shots. And when you got Tatum and Brown and Rob and Al, and you need one guy out there to space the floor, somebody out there, if things aren't working, you're like, just give me somebody out there that's going to catch and hit shots, or going to be like making the defense saying, whoa, we got to guard this guy. Just need one guy in the playoffs to give Tatum an extra step, to give Jaylen Brown the extra 6 inches of space to make his move. If the other guys on the floor or the guys that they normally turn to aren't there, and you need somebody, Hauser in a pinch, I just kind of trust it more than I trust Nesmith now. So Nesmith is the guy that I would put in when things are going like sluggish. Grant Williams also, I thought his game the other night, hitting a bunch of 3-pointers, would spur him back on, but he was 0 for 4 from 3 in this one. Just want to see him do it in these big spots. He did have 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. That was good. He did a decent job on Giannis. He stood his ground. So it wasn't a bad game, but I would still like him to just be more consistent. We need to see that shot start to fall. How does this happen? How do the Celtics sit out 3 key guys, potential MVP candidate, a guy in Al Horford whose praises I was singing yesterday, and this wild card ace in the hole, Robert Williams? How do those guys all sit and the Celtics still give the Milwaukee Bucks a run for their money? Chemistry. And I am going to explain that chemistry next, after we talk about the chemistry behind Built Bar, which is fantastic tasting, tastes great, tastes like a candy bar, yet it has probably less than half the calories of most candy bars, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein, as opposed to the 30 grams of sugar you're going to find in a candy bar, and all those net carbs, which just, you have one candy bar, you're really setting yourself back for the rest of the day. You have a Built Bar, and you can actually work that into a proper day of eating. Are you working out? Are you trying to lose some weight? I am. I've vowed to get myself back into bathing suit shape. Built Bar is going to be in my gym bag, because I know after I lift, after I get on that treadmill or the elliptical, that 130 calories is still going to allow me to burn more calories than I take in. The protein's going to feed my muscles and help my body rebuild. Check out all of the products at Built.com. Use the promo code LOCK15. It gets you 15% off every single time. Sample a little bit. Don't go crazy. Sample what you want at first if you're new. Then use LOCK15 again, because it works every single time. You'll get 15% off every single time at Built.com. If you've ever heard the term, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, that's what happened in this game. against the Milwaukee Bucks, where the whole of the Celtics that was out there is actually greater than the talent that was on the floor, because you go out there and you throw Luke Cornett and Sam Hauser and Aaron Nesmith out there, and no offense to those guys, they're NBA players, right? NBA players for a reason, but they're not good enough to take on the Milwaukee Bucks. Sorry. So, or be effective against the Milwaukee Bucks for very long. If you put the lineups into a 2K simulation or some other simulation type engine, and you ran this game, you'd get blowout after blowout after blowout. Milwaukee just winning by 20 and 30 and double digits all the way through. There's no way that, even with Smart and even with Jaylen Brown, there's no way that the Celtics would have many non-blowouts in that. If you did it 100 times, they might win a few games, but I think the overwhelming majority would be blowouts. But the Celtics came in here and played hard. And I think that's because of chemistry. That's because of the way these guys have worked together over the course of the season. And I think when you see the blowouts, like when you watch the Wizards game or any of these games where the Celtics have been up by 20 or 30 late and you get garbage time, with the Celtics starters on the sideline still up and cheering these guys on and encouraging them, and when one of them makes a play, they're all exploding and it's just a big old great old time. That's meaningful. And Marcus Smart was on the Celtics Talk podcast, the NBC Sports podcast with Chris Forsberg. And he said it's basically, a paraphrase, it's a brotherhood. And first of all, you can't be going through this all season long without developing some level of chemistry. If you don't, and this is my opinion, if you don't, then and you can't, then something's wrong. That tells you something's wrong with some of the key guys on that team. But anyway, as Marcus was saying, when those guys are out there and they see us, the starters, in there cheering and doing all that crazy stuff, that makes them feel good, that builds their confidence, and they're going to do it for these guys. When you see Tatum and Brown and Smart celebrating these 3-point plays and yelling and screaming and hopping around, instead of just sitting around and joking with one another and not even paying attention to the game, when you notice that as a player, you see it, you understand, like, these guys are invested in us just like we're invested in them, and it just feeds itself. And they still have to go against each other in practice, and they still have to go and lift together and eat together and be in buses together. All of that stuff feeds each other, feeds into everything. And honestly, I know that when you like the other guys on the team, and it doesn't have to be everybody, because I've been on teams where I didn't like one or two people, and it's fine. But if you just generally like the people that you're with, and you're genuinely invested in the other guys succeeding and playing well, and it helps that when you have these defined, like very defined roles, because it's very easy to be Marcus Smart and Tatum and Brown and Rob and Al and cheer for these other guys, the garbage time guys, because there's no real threat to their position. It's not like it was the 1920 season with the last Kyrie season, where everybody felt like they were just as good. And, when garbage time included Terry Rozier's probably like, I'm a starter. Why am I in garbage time? And there was like some animosity there or whatever. But a team like this, with very clear roles, it's a little bit easier, no doubt about that. But then, it's just the fact that the character of these guys, the way, the character of the coaching staff, the character of the front office, all of that stuff plays into all of this stuff. But it starts with Tatum and Brown and Smart, especially with those guys. And I love that Smart was saying all of this stuff on that podcast, because he he really truly understands like the human psychology behind it. When you're playing for one another, it allows you to raise your game to another level. And this is why I really am confident in this team moving forward. When you are fully invested, not just the coach, but the plan but your teammates, that gives you that little extra push. It just gives you that little extra push. You help each other, you cover for each other. It makes the defense, which is difficult, a little easier to play because you know that I need to help this guy and I know that guy's going to help me. It just raises, again, the whole is greater than the sum of their parts. Even when it's just the regular starters, even when it's the regular starting five, that whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And the sum of those parts it's pretty good. But why have the Celtics ascended to this level when they're fully healthy? Why are they so damn good? Right? They're not LeBron and AD. They're not Kevin Durant and Kyrie and James Harden. It's Tatum who's risen his game to a high level. Jaylen has risen his game to a pretty high level, but a lot of other pieces fit, and they're just playing hard. They're playing for each other. It's as simple as that. You look at the Celtics on paper and you say, this could be a good team. No one expected them to be a dominant team for as long as they've been dominating in the calendar year 2022. And it's because of this kind of stuff, because they care about each other, they play for one another, and they're invested in each other's success. And I've said this before on a podcast, this goes to the culture. It goes to Ime cultivating this kind of thing. It goes to Brad Stevens cultivating this kind of thing, this belief in everybody as human beings, which is huge, 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 huge. That's the secret sauce. I'll wrap it up by saying this. The secret sauce from Greg Popovich and the best coach of the modern NBA, the 80s and beyond. Greg Popovich is the guy to me because he's invested in the people. And the stories of Popovich, Monty Williams tells great stories about Popovich, and other guys tell great stories about Popovich where they've had trying seasons, or obviously Monty went through a personal tragedy, and Popovich just knows exactly what to say. And none of it has to do with basketball. When guys call him after a tough stretch, a tough season, he doesn't talk to them about basketball. He talks to them about life and other things, and talks to them in terms of being a human being. And the message is very clear. There are other things that are more important. This is a game. It's your job. Do it to the best of your ability, but understand, put it in the proper perspective. Treat people as human beings. Invest in them, their success, their lives, their personal well-being. That's the secret sauce. That's how these guys do this. That's how you get a team like this. Believe in who they are. Invest in these people as people. Don't treat them like just commodities. Invest in them, that it'll pay off. Right. This has been the Friday podcast. Happy Friday to everybody. So no podcast for Saturday or Sunday, but Sunday night after the Celtics play the Memphis Grizzlies, I will be back to discuss the final. By then we will know first round opponent. We will know seed. We will know all that stuff. You can follow me on Twitter, John_Karalis. I'll keep you updated. You can read my stuff at Boston Sports Journal. I'm certainly going to be writing about that. So you can get the news before the podcast. But next podcast is Sunday night. And then again, every time there's a game from now until the season is over, every time there's a game, there will be a post-game podcast. So hopefully I'm doing 17 more post-game podcasts, or post-win podcasts, I should say. 17 more post-win podcasts is the goal. You can do the math. You know where that takes us. So subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Watch the show on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube. So close. So close. We're almost at 4,900. All right. The regular season ends on Sunday. The playoffs begin in a week from there. So by the playoffs, I'm hoping for 5,000. So please subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you are subscribed, I would love it if you shared the podcast. Tell your friends, tell everybody that they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.